Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for other writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeideman. My guest today is author Nick Teeguarden. We're going to be talking about his new book, The Copper Scroll, part of the Masa Chronicles?
Monster Chronicles, yes,
Masa
sir.
Chronicles. Okay, which is, as it says at the top, a Christian action thriller. Nick, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Before we get to talking to Nick about himself and his work, as those who are familiar with the show are well aware, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched. Do we like it? Do we not like it? Do we ever want to have anything to do with that again? I'll go first just to give Nick a little time to collect his thoughts. So, two things on the watching front for me. We went over the weekend to see the new Knives Out movie, Wake Up Dead Man, and really liked it. It's another solid entry in the Knives Out, I guess what, Knives Out universe. And my wife is much more familiar with mysteries, so she already knew, who, like how it was done. I think she had some questions about who did it, but she, was really good about that. I had some suspicions, and we talked about it afterward, which is always fun. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go see it. What's really interesting, I think it's playing in all independent cinemas. So, like, if you wanted to go to your local multiplex, I don't think they'll have it. And I think it comes to Netflix because it is a Netflix film. I think it comes to Netflix maybe on the 12th or the 13th, so like 2 weeks from now. So, if you don't get bitter, it's okay. You can still watch it at home soon, but highly recommend to go see that. And speaking of Netflix, we just finished watching the second season of the comedy mystery Man on the Inside, which is with Ted Danson as this retired engineer who goes undercover. And the second season was okay. I still like the first one more, but it's still a very enjoyable show. If you kind of like not even a cozy murder mystery, it's a cozy mystery. There's no murder involved, but this one also very enjoyable. So highly well. Nick, what about you? Anything exciting or not exciting for reading and or watching?
Well, first of all, I've been wanting to watch that Knives Out movie, so I'm glad to hear that it was good. Most of them have been, so
Hmm.
that's good way to start. Churchill's Secret Messenger is something that I'm just about to finish up. I started it over the weekend. Um, I started it as just kind of like what other people are writing about French Resistance because I'm thinking about writing another story on that. And that's what this is about. So I started reading it because of that. And then I'm coming to the finish now where, it's having a hard time finding a place to actually stop and put it down for a minute. So I'm really enjoying that. Um, and then, from there, Andrew Clavin's after that, The Dark, or can't remember if that's the exact title, but anyway, that one was really good as far as a thriller goes. So
All right, that's okay. Good stuff. Oh, you can't go wrong with a good thriller. And I'm blanking on it right now, but a couple of weeks ago we had David R. Stokes on to talk about his book, which is set right after, like the events leading up to and right after Churchill's funeral. It's kind of like a historical fiction, thriller, mystery, drama type of thing. It was really good, very enjoyable. If you like historical fiction and you like that, that end of the Cold War type era story. Highly recommend. I really wish I could remember the title right now, but it's right behind me on that stack of books. But okay, so we're now okay, but that's enough about that. Okay, we're talking today, as I said, to Nick Teeguarden about his new book, The Copper Scroll. So I'm just going to read the about the author page, which is in the book. Nicholas Teeguarden is a husband, father, and veteran. Thanks for your service. A devoted Christian and award-winning author from small-town Oklahoma. His global military service fuels the vivid, action-packed world of the Masa Chronicles, The Copper Scroll, just like this one, a Christian thriller honored with the Christ Lit Award, a reader's favorite five-star review. So, Nick, let's talk a little bit about you. So how did you get your start? Were you always a writer? Were you a voracious reader as a child, or was like writing something you kind of, I don't want to say stumbled into, but something you found an enjoyment of later on in life?
yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag. Growing up, I really enjoyed more watching the movies. Of course, my sister was the reader, but then I would try to follow up kind of what she was reading sometimes. But she was a lot smarter than I was too. So um, anyway, but yeah, so I enjoyed reading, but I more enjoyed Indiana Jones, all those kind of 80s, 90s adventures, movies is really what I grew up in. Um, Writing just kind of came along over the last couple of years, kind of after the military, been spent a lot of time researching things and just different things I was interested in. And then one day I just started typing, and that's kind of how it wound up.
And that's what led to the eventual the Copper Scroll.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
All right. That's great. That's great. So I like to call this like in screenwriting terms, we call it the elevator pitch, or you might call it the cocktail party pitch, kind of like that 1 to 2 sentence summary, like to try and get somebody hooked. So what would you
Yeah.
say for the Copper Scroll? And you say, "Hey, Nick, what are you working on? Or what's your new book about? Tell me about it." And you would say,
Well, if you enjoy Indiana Jones, you'll really love this. It's a very clean thriller. Imagine a ancient piece of hardware giving away a treasure map, giving away to different elements coming together that you may have thought have been extinct or otherwise coming together to figure out who's on the good side, who's on the bad side, or is everybody just in it for themselves and nobody's really good or bad. So that's kind of where I got to.
okay, fantastic. So I think the big question is like, what was the inspiration for the story? I mean, you said you had a love, Indiana Jones and 80s and 90s adventure films. So what was kind of like the spark that set this whole thing off? Did you just think like, well, there's all this biblical history in the Mid East region. Like, what if somebody found, some kind of artifact or what have you that's been missing or rumored to be and existent, but nobody knows where it is. And is that set things off, or was it just kind of like, I think this would be a fun story to tell?
Yeah, so it was kind of telling myself a story and trying to find something that was in history, kind of like the Ark of the Covenant or um, the Holy Grail or something like that, but something that wasn't really used that much. And so I found the Copper Scroll, which they had found as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls back in the 50s. And people have been studying it ever since, trying to figure out if it leads to anything, if it's a treasure map, if it's, just some farmer's instructions on where his son can find water or something like that. So it's just different things. And so I was like, it would be fun if, somebody just went and accidentally stumbled into unlocking one of the mysteries and it led on a chase. And then, as religious things do, start drawing attention from other elements. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of how the Templars got involved. And I was thinking about this before. I don't know if you know, the Vatican kind of a few months ago invited the Templars back into the Vatican, into the fold, and all these like different Templar elements came in and did a special thing. So didn't really even know for a fact that Templars are out there. I was just like, what if?
Hmm.
And so Templars got involved, and then ISIS doesn't want truth about Christianity to come out, and then the Jewish Mossad wants to help because it's from a Jewish sect that buried the scrolls and all this kind of thing. So that's kind of how that draws them all in, and then uh, you know Massa is in the middle trying to figure out which way to go, who's going to be the protector, and who's just going to destroy it or hide it or whatever.
Okay, well, I have a lot of questions about the characters. We'll get to those in a minute. But one of the things I did want to ask you is that so on the very top of the cover here, it says it's a Christian action theater thriller. Was that your intent from the start, or did it kind of develop as you worked on the story, or did you figure that it's set in this region and it involves this particular aspect of history? Well, it would be a great way to combine those and tell this unique kind of story. And I also wanted to ask. How extensive did you want the religious aspects to be a part of it? Did you have to pull back a little bit, or did you feel like I have to kind of ramp this part up, or this needs a little building up?
So yeah, I'll try to kind of wind this up to I went into it just wanting to provide a clean piece of entertainment, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Just a clean thriller. And then the Christianity stuff didn't really come along until, I'm two or three artifacts into finding out what I want it to lead to. And then, you know, once I started with that, it's like, what is enough, but
Mm.
not too much to where other people and will enjoy it, if that makes sense. I don't want to get stuck in just Christianity
Sure.
and people not enjoy it. But I also didn't want somebody that would pick it up on the mainstream side to say, "Wow, that was a preachy book."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tried to walk that line, and I think I did. You know, I accomplished what I set out for.
Yeah, I would agree with that because it is not overtly religious, but I think to me the biggest aspect, apart from the history behind the artifacts, is that you have some of the supporting characters like almost having a kind of like the the boat scene in Jaws, where like they're trying to outdo each other with their knowledge of different proverbs and
Yeah,
passages. And it's just kind of like, okay, I understand what Nick is going for here, and he's embracing the sentiment of the story, and I think that was it added to it
right,
rather than being like, okay, I want to get past this, but it was more like, okay, he's fleshing out the characters, but he's also emphasizing the attitude of the story, and
right.
I thought it was very well done. So we talked about the characters a little bit. So let's start with Joshua, our protagonist, who the way I interpret him, big history buff, very enthusiastic about pretty much everything, and so one of the things I always find with writers is that a lot of their characters are some kind of aspect or some kind of reflection upon their own personality. So, how much of you is what constitutes Joshua? I mean, he's I'm just like that, or he's everything I want to be, or he's everything I wish I could be?
So Joshua started as kind of how I got my start in growing up. My dad always had these great stories. He was in the military, traveled the world. One of his favorite stories, just quick side note, he went to the Vatican with his friend, and he grew up Methodist, but his friend was Catholic. And so he's in the courtyard, and the Pope comes out in his little Pope mobile, and my dad's just says he's just waving at the Pope, and the Pope is just waving and looking at him, and he's like, "The Pope is looking at me. The Pope is looking at me." And then when the Pope leaves, he looks around, and he's the only one standing there. And then he looks down, and he realizes everybody else was kneeling, and he was the only one standing up waving. So that's kind of like you know an idea of those stories that he had. Those were always a part of holidays, all those things. So one of my driving forces, as like I was going through the military and coming of age, if you will, is to try to travel and come up with my own stories to tell people, and that would carry on after you know me, or somebody could say, "Yeah, that guy, he told me a story about this one time." So anyway, that's a long way to say that he's a mix of kind of my dad, myself, and my son, if you will, because we're all adventurous and we all have our own stories and we all look at things a different way. And if you might catch Joshua looking at things a different way, the same thing two different ways in the middle of it.
And you're also waiting for your own "the Pope waved at me" kind of story, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. My stories are never as good as his. So
Well, not yet, anyway. You haven't met the new Pope yet, so fingers crossed for
no,
it.
no, I haven't.
Okay, so the other character I really wanted to ask you about is Noah, who is the female lead, but she is definitely not a damsel in distress. She's much more likely,
Right.
and the way I read it, to that she's more likely to be the one leading the charge, so to speak. So I think the question is like, is she based on any particular personality type? And the other question is, who was more challenging for you to write? Was it Joshua or Noah?
Okay, so this is if my wife ever watches this, she's gonna be mad. But I even told people you're gonna figure out who Noah is written after once you start writing, or once you start reading it. You're gonna be like, "Oh, Noah, I know exactly who that is." But my wife is the one that um, she's always been very independent as far as she doesn't need me to do anything for her, if that makes sense. It's like she will figure it out.
Hmm.
If she asks me to do it, it's because she just wants me to do it real quick and she doesn't want to have to put the time into it, if you will. But she's not scared to get her hands dirty. She'll change her tires. She'll, put her own oil in, all those things. She's always been capable of doing that. And she is very Um, Not mean, but very direct, if that makes sense.
Okay, so like, she tells it like it is. She pulls no punches.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I can definitely see how that would be an influence on this character of Noah, because she is really a very, I don't want to keep taking it back to Indiana Jones. She's a very Marion Ravenwood kind of
Right.
character, and
Yeah.
just even a little more so.
And yeah, and I didn't even think about that character until I was completely done and went and watched Indiana Jones. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, two in the same. But yeah, it's good.
Sure, sure. We referred to this a little bit ago. So the supporting characters, and I know this sounds like a joke, but there's a priest and a rabbi. Nobody walks into a bar. I had to say that. I always thought of that as I was writing the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Did you want to include multiple religions to show the diversity of the region as well as the historical aspects of it? Because I think it's interesting that you have what's it, Father Nance and Rabbi Cohen. And there's also Dr.
Yep.
Khalil, who is Joshua's professor at the university in Jordan. I'm not giving any spoilers away,
Yep.
but I just thought it was interesting
Yeah.
you had all these different representations of the I guess I almost want to call it the some of the big religions in the area.
Uh, yeah. So my focus was to just involve everybody for everybody to be able to read this and take something away from it or say, or to be honest, really kind of look at it and say, oh, well, this guy's writing about how we can all just get along, even though if we're from different religions, this is how we can support each other because, um, you know, Joshua's helpers end up being the ones that you wouldn't really think would be his helpers. But yeah, so that was kind of my focus was to bring them all together, kind of show that we all have our own similarities and we all have our own journey to the truth.
hmm Okay, no, I definitely get that. One of the things I thought was really impressive was that the role of geography of the region as part of the story, almost like some of the areas become not just a setting, but almost a character unto themselves. I mean, because you have Jerusalem, I hope I'm saying this right, Ain Feshka, Qumran, and Masada. That one I'm familiar with. So I think the big question is like, how extensive was your research into the lay of the land, and did that have a significant impact on developing the story? I mean, maybe you were like, okay, I'm not sure where they should go, and you're looking at the map. Oh, and this passage from the Bible says, oh, something happens here that does that spark inspiration?
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, my dogs are barking, so you may have to forgive me for a second there.
That's okay.
So being in the military at the time I was in, I spent a significant amount of time in the Middle East.
Okay.
Really kind of without saying too much there. Um, and so just kind of being in it and knowing what the feeling is while you're there, the different um, smells or the different challenges your body has as opposed to what you experience at home. And then having journeyed through that, doing research on a place I'm going to and getting there and seeing what I missed or what I might should have paid attention to. Um, all that to say that I did a little bit of research on every place just to make sure I wasn't saying something that was completely out of turn, and then kind of put myself into it without, actually traveling there, which I've always wanted to travel there anyway. Um, Without actually being on the street myself, looking at pictures, reading what other people would say about it, and then what would my experience be if I was actually sitting there.
Okay. No, I get that. I was going to say that, do you think that your real life experience in being in that region, that it definitely was able to have a positive impact on not just the writing, but the overall, the context of the story? Because what really struck me is that you said like you were able to like describe the smells of somewhere, and that's something that you really can't experience without having been there. And then for you to be able to convey that in your writing to kind of help transport the reader to that area.
Yeah, so having been to multiple places, that region of the world, if you will, there's a lot of those. spice markets, or you're walking down the street and there's just a bunch of uh, food vendors, you know, all making their own sandwiches, and kind of the smells I experienced there. I mean, it really is one of those things. Once you once you smelled that, you can't forget the smell.
Right.
And it's not to say it's a bad smell. It's just one of those like it's a really powerful, really individual smell that you just really don't get anywhere else. So
Yeah.
that was that. I don't know for a fact that there's a vendor on the streets of Amman that cooks that or whatever. I just went with what I've experienced and had a feeling that it would be pretty close to something that somebody else would experience there.
Yeah, well, I could totally relate to that because I think early in the book, after Joshua arrives in Amman, that, it's one thing to be able to read this and kind of semi-relate to, stranger in a strange land type of thing. But then you talk about like how he goes to this a stand or a booth and he gets falafel, and like, okay, I've had falafel, I know what that smells like, and I know what it tastes like. So
Yeah,
that it makes it a little more relatable that you can say, okay, I can. He's making this a little more relatable. It's a little more human aspect to it. That it's not just slam bang whiz action type of thing, but it's about
right.
the experience of being there beyond all of the action and the adventure.
Yeah. And if you've ever been there and you've gone to a falafel vendor that you probably shouldn't have gone to and ended up somewhere you don't want to be for an extended period of time, you always remember that guy's like, I'm not getting another one there. So
All right, so positive and some not so positive
yeah,
experiences to be
absolutely.
gained from that. I totally understand that. So I want to ask you a little bit about the writing of the book. So did you run into any roadblocks with the story, like story logic or progression of events or even characters that made you have to go back to maybe find out where things maybe have went off track? Like you're working on the story and you realize, okay, something about this isn't working. Did you have to kind of go back like, okay, I need to retrace my steps and find out, where did things take a wrong turn?
Yeah, so I think in talking to other people that write or other authors, it seems like everybody kind of has their own way of doing things. And mine is kind of lay out the story and I'm very organized or very technical person. So having it all laid out in an outline type thing, and then going back, and then even before a chapter starts, is like, this is where I want this chapter to go. But honestly, when I start writing, the characters end up taking on their own personalities while I'm writing them, and they'll take me somewhere, and it's like, wait a minute, now I'm at the end of this chapter. I didn't cover anything I wanted to cover, and now I've got to start this next chapter. I have no idea where I'm at. How do I bring this back? So, either adjusting what happened to the chapter before or kind of relooking, okay, this is where the story takes us. And I think, honestly, there's as many endings to the story as there are chapters in the book, is one way to say it. So,
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask, and then you brought it up. I said, did sometimes the characters take over, and that
yeah, absolutely.
they were dictating what was going to happen, both in terms of story and plot. But it sounds like, yeah, that's exactly what happened, or at least a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, and your joke about a priest and a rabbi, that's exactly what I was thinking in that chapter that you're probably mentioning, where they go back and forth.
Hmm.
So priest and rabbi are sitting there and they start talking about something, and then they each want to show what their biblical, knowledge is, and they go back and forth. And that was probably the most fun little piece of the book that I wrote that I really look back on. I was like, I enjoyed that moment. So
So that also inspires the question. I mean, what kind of feedback were you getting maybe from beta readers, or did you consult experts in the field? I mean, like archaeologists, or go to religious figures and say, does this work? I'm not that you were saying like, is this historically accurate, but more of a, does this seem like it's very realistic in the way it all plays out?
yeah, so my biggest thing was with it being a Christian thing is I'm pretty well versed on the Bible, but sometimes I miss things, or I misinterpret things, or I interpret something a way that somebody else doesn't.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's true of everybody. But I didn't want to do something that would go completely against the Bible, if you will. So I would always, if there was something in there that was very related to the Bible or very something that was actually a very a piece that was actually in the Bible that I mentioned is that I didn't put it in a place where it didn't belong, right? So
Hmm.
if um, this item was found at this spot, um, is it possible that it could have ended up there, or was it something that got destroyed later on and I just missed the fact that it was destroyed? So that's kind of how I got there.
Okay, well, that also begs the question: did you ever take some creative license? Just kind of like this is kind of a boring way for this this thing how this played out. I kind of want to like ramp it up a little bit.
Yeah, so I took a little bit of creative license, more on the archaeological history piece of it. Anything that was directly related to the Bible, I tried not to go too far into creative ways. Um, More creative as far as like what could have happened to it in the centuries, or the millennia after that it ended up at that point. Could it have happened? Could have happened to it in between that point and this point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes plenty of sense. And I would remind everybody, we are talking to Nick Teeguarden about his book, The Copper Skull, the Massa Chronicles. Okay, so two big questions that I wanted to ask. So, okay, so it does say chronicles, plural, which indicates that there is more adventure to come. So I guess that's like the big question, like what's next? Do you have like the Joshua's next adventure in development, or is it almost done, or what is the plan for that?
So I have two stories in development. One is a Masa story, and the other is completely different. Like I said, um, thinking about a French Resistance thing, historical fiction. So I've got two stories I'm kind of working on. Um, that kind of goes back to something we said before, as far as like I just like everything, so it's hard to really pin it down.
Sure.
But yes, Masa will definitely have some more stories and more adventures.
Okay, well, that's great. I also wanted to ask, so what have reactions been, especially because, as we said, it is a Christian action thriller, clean entertainment. I mean, I imagine you've probably heard from fans of all of those different genres. Like someone said, this is exactly the kind of stuff I love, or like it reminds me of this. I mean, what has the reaction been from from your readers, I guess?
Yeah, overall very positive, and you see that in reviews. But then if you go through the reviews, you also see the ones on the very Christian side and the ones on the very mainstream side.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why I get at like not just tooting my own horn. I thought I did a pretty good job of walking the line right in between, because I didn't go too far into the Christian side of it to the point of some people are upset about different things in the book and how it ended up. And then,
Hmm.
some that are very mainstream and have nothing to do with religion and, religion is a joke, that type of thing, pick it up and, it's really not the story for them,
Yeah.
because they're so far over there, if that makes sense.
No,
But
no.
yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, for the most part, for the most people that are in the circles that I meant for this book to be in, it has been an overwhelming positive response.
That's great. That is great. Congratulations on that. So, what I like to ask writers is like, so what advice do you have for someone like, because this is a very unique animal because it's an action adventure. It's in essence family friendly, but there's also some religious aspects to it. I mean, so what if someone wants to write something like it, but they're not Nick Teeguarden. They can't write the same kind of thing. So like, what
Right.
advice would you have for like someone who wants to write a more religious based story, or for someone who wants to write a flat out adventure story?
Right. So I keep referring to Indiana Jones just because he was my favorite person growing up. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, um, Dan Brown, Da Vinci
Mhm.
Code,
Sure.
those type of. I've always enjoyed. Those are my favorite stories. But I can't write the way Dan Brown writes. I can't write, Lucasfilm. Um, I can write what Nick Teagarden writes.
Hmm.
So you may want to have a story like that. You have to find your own voice and be comfortable with the fact that some people may enjoy your voice and some people will not.
Okay, that's great stuff. Okay, so we've been talking to Nick Teeguarden and his book, The Copper Scroll. So Nick, where can people find out more about you? I know you have a website.
Yeah, so Nick Teeguarden is a very not popular name. So if you just type Nick Teeguarden into a Google or you know search bar somewhere, it's probably going to come back with me on there in the first page at least a couple of times, if not the entire first page. But Nick Teeguarden across social media, YouTube, the web page, all that is it's all the same kind of name, Nicholas Teeguarden, Nick Teeguarden in that um, space.
Okay. And if people want to actually get a copy of the Copper Scroll for themselves, I mean, did they go to your website? Is it an Amazon thing?
Right now, the ebook is Amazon, but the paperback you can pretty much get anywhere. And I'm working on January. The enrolled in KDP comes up, and I'll probably take it out and let the ebook go a little bit wider,
Hmm.
just to see if I think people are being underrepresented outside the Amazon. So that's my goal.
Okay, sounds great. And again, it is Nick Teagarden. The book is The Copper Scroll, The Massa Chronicles. Nick, thank you so much for being here today. This was a great discussion.
Absolutely, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, my pleasure. And viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. For my social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog at maximumz.blog. For Twitter, it is at maximum_z, and it's at Pez Screenwriting for Blue Sky and Instagram. And this show also has its own accounts on Twitter and Blue Sky. Those are both at Podcast CWL. And you can also check out my Go Ahead and Ask books, the ones that are on Amazon, the ones about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's Nick. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.